Hello and welcome to another full product tutorial here from Zenatta Consulting. My name is Tyler Colt, and in this video, we're going to be going into a deep dive in Zoho Sign. Zoho Sign is, of course, Zoho's competitor for applications like DocuSign or Adobe Sign that lets you gather signatures electronically from your clients, employees, or really anybody who needs to sign off. So before we jump in, I do want to ask, if you find this video useful, please be sure to like and subscribe down below, as that really does help us out. And if you end up needing a little bit of help setting this up for yourself or really working on anything across the Zoho suite, just head over to zenatta.com and click on that book a meeting button, and we'll be talking to you about how we can help in no time. So without any further ado, let's jump right on into the walkthrough. So I'm going to break down this video into two main sections. The first one is going to be an overview of Zoho Sign itself. We're just going to go through each of those menus, make sure that you have a good understanding of how exactly it works. Then in the back half, we're going to go through some of the usage, right? So now we know how it's set up. How does this application really get used? And in that section, we'll go ahead and cover Zoho CRM integration, Zoho Forms integration, and Zoho Books integration, where each of those work a little bit differently for different use cases. So without any further ado, let's jump into a tutorial of the application as a whole. So here we are inside of Zoho Sign. We're going to go through each of these tabs over here on the left, and I'll show you where and how to use them. So this first page, this sign, this is kind of your top level page. You will be able to send documents for signature directly from this page. This isn't normally how this app gets used though, so I'm going to show sending documents just a little bit differently later. What this will also do is surface any requests that have been sent to you via Zoho Sign, and you'll be able to easily sign off on those all from this primary homepage. As we move down the list into Documents, the Documents tab will essentially show you any of the sign requests that have been sent, signed, rejected, expired, really each of those different groupings all just bundled here into different statuses. We'll come back to this page as well. We're going to send some documents as a part of this walkthrough, but really these are essentially just lists of those sign requests organized by various statuses as part of the process. Templates is where we're going to come to load in templated documents and add the places in those documents where data fields are either going to be filled by us or filled by the signer. So again, when we get into that back half of this tutorial and we're showing the usage of the application itself, we'll actually create a template out of this document right here, a very basic, obviously very basic signed document, and we'll send it out that way so that you'll be able to see that process. Sign forms are an interesting little tool. So when you have a template set up, you can create what's called a sign form, which can be embedded on a website or sent out in a link in an email, where someone would be able to fill in some information, validate that they are who they say they are, and then sign that document. Again, I'll demo one of these in the back half when we're working with our templates. Reports down here below are going to fall into a variety of different categories, everything from tracking the types of activities that are performed in the application to some of the high-level reports on documents that have been sent, completed, recalled, in progress. Really, it's giving you some of those high-level data points about where various documents are in the overall process of sending them out. Definitely kind of high-level reporting here, nothing too crazy to dig into, but it does give you some of the input into how things are going across your full process. Now, last but not least is going to be the settings menu. Here we are going to go through a handful of these just so I can highlight exactly what they do. So my profile, this is essentially a place where you can add your personal information. One really valuable thing that we can do here is actually set our signature as a user. The nice thing about this is that you can actually pre-sign documents that you are a signer for by filling it in here. Really all that means is that, let's say I'm going to send a proposal and I'm going to sign it and our client is going to sign it. Maybe I already know at the time that I'm sending it, of course, I accept this document. I could just pre-fill my own signature as long as it's been filled in here. The integrations tab is going to highlight a ton of different integrations for this application. If we go through them one by one, really it will integrate with a variety of different digital signature tools, which are generally going to be region specific. So things like this, these are really like verifying who's signing it. So you might have someone who has like a USB that has some type of hash key on it. We want to validate that way. But these are essentially just additional elements of security that you can add when you are sending out documents. Good examples of these, if you've ever signed a document, it asks you some like personal information. What was the make and model of your first car? Which one of these addresses have you never lived at? Those types of information can be managed via some of these additional providers. Identity providers are just another layer of verification. So these first two categories kind of go together. We can also integrate Zoho Sign with a ton of different Zoho applications. So we can use this for sending proposals, job offers. We can mail merge and send it out. We can use Zoho Forms and send things that way. Really across the board, we have a ton of different options for integrating Zoho Sign into other applications. And then on top of that, of course, you can build your own integration if you're comfortable working with code and using a REST API. Now, we also do have integrations for some of the Google and Microsoft Workspace applications. So being able to send out documents via Gmail, being able to have that little plugin where someone sends you a document, you open it up, use the Gmail integration, add a signature field, and send it back to them. Similar there with Microsoft applications, so importing documents to OneDrive, automation via Power Automate, tying things into your communication tools. Cloud storage, these are essentially what you would think of as like a backup option. So let's say that every time a document gets signed, I want to automatically store that into OneDrive. Maybe that's like your home base for files. You'll be able to use one of these integrations to do so. So it's going to support WorkDrive, Google Drive, OneDrive, Dropbox, and Box, kind of the big providers here of those applications. Keep in mind, again, let's say you're using a different storage tool. You can still do this. You might just need to write a little bit of code that will upload the document there once it's been completed. As you'd expect, digital signature is a big part of selling processes for a lot of companies. So we do have integrations for a variety of CRMs. As you'd expect, most people are going to be using the Zoho CRM integration, and we'll actually demo that a little bit later. But other people may be using any of these other options for capturing those digital signatures. One of the cool things with Zoho Sign, even if you're not like all in Zoho, is that it's very inexpensive compared to a lot of other digital signature options, especially if you're doing it via automation. Generally speaking, costs about 50 cents to automate a document through Zoho Sign. Most of the other providers are going to be north of $1. So if you are doing this at a high volume, there can actually be some significant cost savings where even if you're not a Zoholic and you're in here with all your applications, you can still get some value out of here, even from a cost saving perspective, and integrate it with your existing CRM. Integration platforms, these are essentially tools that sit between various applications and provide drag and drop or more intuitive integration paths. So as you'd expect, it does tie with Zoho Flow, but we also have hooks for Zapier, Power Automate, Make, Integrately, Pabbly Connect, and FormStack. Pabbly Connect, I've never heard of them, must be a new one, but the rest of these are pretty universal tools that are used for tying various applications together without requiring the use of code. And then last but not least, we do have a couple other integrations here. So OpenAI, essentially a ChatGPT integration that can summarize and review documents for you. You can get documents digitally stamped, and you can sign, if you're in South America, via the NOM 151 standard for digital signature. So across the board, ton of different integrations here that you can use. Like I mentioned, in the back half, we're going to focus on a handful of the Zoho integrations, primarily for CRM, Forms. We'll take a look at Writer. We'll also take a look at Zoho Books, keeping in mind that most of these integrations for Zoho work pretty similarly. So for example, like the CRM and Recruit, they work just about the same. So if I show you one, you've kind of seen them both. They just live in a different place. And so after integrations, we do have a variety of different notification settings. These are primarily going to be notifications that are internal, right? So do I want to get a notification when a document is viewed, signed, approved? All of these, of course, going to the owner of that document. I can also get notifications when any documents I've received have been signed, approved, or declined. So really just those like automated emails that we can turn on or off. We have our contacts list, which is basically everybody who's been added to a document in the past. The nice thing about this is that once they're in here as a contact, they will automatically be available as like a pre-filled option for future sendings. So if you have people that you do a lot of business with often, then they'll end up as a contact and you'll be able to easily select them. The trash section, as I'd expect, is just documents that you have trashed. They will stay in here for 30 days, if memory serves correct, and you can restore them. Under users and control, this is where you'll see all the various users that are in your organization. You'll also be able to put them into groups, roles, and profiles. So these are really important, and you can create unique sharing rules that live between them. So profiles are essentially going to be what types of permissions people can do. I know I'm starting in a weird order here, but I promise it'll make sense. So profile permissions are, can I make, send, correct, and delete documents? Can I update and work with our templates, right? What types of things can I do across the board? And what types of documents can I do them for, right? So maybe you can go in and say, hey, you're allowed to correct documents that you own, but not documents that were just shared to you. Those are just there for visibility. Roles are essentially just going to be an arbitrary thing. So let's say we have a roles called sales, and these will end up affecting some of our sharing rules. So within our roles, we can create data sharing settings where we can share from particular user groups. This is where things do get a little bit tricky, right? Where you have to come in, create different roles, create different groups, and then come into our sharing settings to decide who should be able to see what based on their relevant roles and groups. So here, let's say I want to share from a particular group. I'll come in and say maybe we have our contracts team. And maybe the contracts team is the one who is actually preparing and sending the contracts. But maybe we want that sales team to be able to see those. So we can come in and click on sales, go into data sharing, and then we can add a group that will have their documents shared to the sales role. So it's a little tricky. It's a little counterintuitive, to be totally honest with you. But the way to think about it is you make a role for who data should be shared to, and you make a group for whose data should be shared from, right? So you'll kind of create your hierarchies using a combination of those two different settings. Next group of options here comes into our account settings. These are a lot of the default things that we want to set across the board. So if you want to say by default, our documents are good for 30 days and we're going to follow up every 6 days, you can do that here. We can enforce authentication across the board. So, I may have mentioned earlier that we've got that OTP authentication. We can make that mandatory. We can choose which type of modes we want to allow document delivery from. We can choose who we want the email address to be when it sends out. And we can choose whether or not the document ID will be uploaded as a field in the documents. We can also come in and set some of our recipient experience settings. So if we want to make sure that everyone has to draw in their signature, we can do that here. We can choose particular colors. So I know some people need like a signature in blue. You can require that. You can also choose the types of actions they should be able to do. So can a document be reassigned? Can it be forwarded? Are they allowed to download it or email it to somebody else? We can also choose how we want field navigation to work. So this is like when you fill out one field and it skips you to the next. I recommend leaving this on. It just makes it a lot easier for people to complete documents, but you don't have to if you don't want to. We can create various folders, which are just organizational tools. We can create different types, which are really just like a field on a document to categorize them. I'm going to skip blockchain because I don't really use that, but if you want to, you can stamp the signature onto a blockchain. Email verification, this is really important. I don't have it set up in a demo account because for me, it doesn't really matter here, but you'll want to set up your DKIM and SPF to make sure that you are getting your documents delivered directly to your clients and not landing in spam. We can also choose a cloud backup tool, which will essentially tie into those integrations that we talked about earlier. So I can come in and have all of our documents automatically back up to a particular location. And then last but not least, if you do need to have a timestamp on documents, you can enable that here. The rest of these are pretty straightforward. Organizational details. This is your company name. This is your logo. This is your address. You fill that in here. Subscription details is actually an important one for some people. So this is really just going to show you, again, most of you are probably on Zoho 1, so it's just included. The one thing that does matter here is your add-ons for Zoho Sign credits and complimentary credits. So credits are essentially used for different types of automated actions. So if you're using a script to automatically create a document or using a sign form to automatically create a document, it will require a certain level of credits. Just make sure here you do get a handful of complimentary credits, and you may need to buy additional Zoho Sign credits if you are automating a lot of documents. Again, this is actually where a lot of the cost savings come from, because it is so much cheaper to buy credits here than it is to do the equivalent action in DocuSign or Adobe Sign. We can include a legal disclosure. They're going to have their default disclosure. If you want some additional information, you can surely do that under the legal disclosure settings. Email templates are just an ability to customize these templates. You can do a decent amount of customization here. Honestly, what most people do is come in and just set some of these colors to make sure that they match their brand identity, right? So maybe I want to change this to more of like a Zenatta green. That's not perfect, but it's a little closer. And we can just do those here. We can also add additional merge fields into these if we would like to. So you can see under this little question mark, we'll just need to copy paste one of those little merge tags into the template, and then it will fill in that data for us automatically. Last but not least, under our developer settings, you do have the ability to trigger custom webhooks when things are completed, sent, signed, deleted, recalled, whatever the action may be. And these are, again, a developer tool that will allow you to post data out to your own platform based on those activities. We also have some API tokens that can be generated both for development, so kind of like the sandbox, as well as for deployment, which is like, hey, we're ready to go live. Last but not least, we can go ahead and get a template out and get all of the JSON data about that template. Again, if you're not a developer, probably doesn't matter to you, but if you are, this actually saves you quite a lot of time. Just to be able to come in and grab these fields much more easily. Now that we've gone over the kind of overall walkthrough, what we're going to do next is actually show how this application gets used on a day-to-day basis. And that really all starts with templates, right? Most of the time, we're not writing up contracts from scratch and sending them out, right? We've got some type of template that we're using, some type of document that serves as like our overall baseline. And we're going to create that as a template. Now, then templates will be able to be sent out directly from Zoho CRM, as well as via integrations for a couple different tools. So let's go ahead and create a template. I'm going to go to the top right. I'm going to create a template here. I am going to drag and drop a document in, which is that example contract. Like I mentioned, that's just this very, very simple document, just so I can show you how to add some fields, map them, and kind of assign them to the relevant people. So I've added my document. I'm going to give it a name here, and I will give you this little tip. Check the name here for this document as well as for the template name. Sometimes you'll see this one will come with like a .pdf, right? You may just want to remove that just to make sure that things stay clean. Down here below under recipients, these are basically each of the different people that are going to need to either sign or review this document or potentially receive a copy when they're done. So if we add one of these roles, we can go over to the right and set what type of person this is. This is like a signer. This is an in-person signer. They might need to approve it, or they just need to receive a copy. I'll give these some role names. So I'll say that signer number 1 is going to be the client. Signer number 2 is going to be Zenatta. Now, in a lot of cases here, you're not going to pre-fill anything for the client signature. But for the internal signature, maybe we know that's always going to be done by, one of our team members. And so we'll just pre-fill them in the document here. In my case, at Zenatta, we actually have different people that sign them. So I'm going to show you how to do it that way. But if you always have one person, you can just set them as that signer and it will automatically go to them each time. Now down here under more settings, we do have the ability to set various days to complete. So basically how many days it will take or how many days we'll offer them to finish this document before it's going to expire. We can categorize it into various document types. We can add things to folders automatically. And then we can turn on or off the automatic reminders that will go out throughout the life cycle of this document. So I'm going to leave all these as default, but just keep in mind, you might give people a little more or a little less time just based on your particular requirements. Now click continue. And now we'll go into the actual page editor for this document. And so what you'll notice is that inside of Zoho Sign, this is not like a Word or a Zoho Writer editor where I can't type into here and actually update the content that's on this document. What we generally recommend doing is uploading things as PDFs and then doing this field overlay. Over here on the right, you'll see that we have these 3 different categories. We have data that can be pre-filled by us. We have data that can be completed by the client. And then we have data that will be completed by us. And so what we'll do is we'll select into each of these various fields, and then we will drag and drop those fields onto our document. So in this case, maybe we're going to have the client fill out their name. So I'll drag a field in. Actually, we'll get rid of this field and I'll show you a better way to do it. Rather than using a text box, we'll go ahead and drag this full name field in. Then we'll grab their company. And then let's say we want them to confirm the project name for whatever reason. We'll go ahead and just drag in an open text box. Now, whenever we do use these text fields that are not particularly defined to a name, a company, some type of predefined value, I do recommend coming in and giving this a data label. So we'll call this our project name. And then our field name we'll just also have as project name. The reason for that is just so that when the user comes in to look at this, they'll be able to easily see what this field is for. Last but not least, we can go ahead and drag in their signature. And then let's say that we also want to get the sign date filled in as well as part of that signing process. The nice thing is, one of the reasons I really recommend using sign date rather than date is that this will automatically fill in as the date at which they are signing. So it's just one less thing that they have to click on. For our signature, we'll toggle over to the Zenatta section and drag in a signature and sign date. You will notice that they do color code these so that we don't have to remember off the top of our head who's signing what. It all becomes pretty apparent just based on the color coding. As you'd expect, there are a ton of different fields that we can add here, everything from those signatures. Maybe you want to have an initial on a certain page. Maybe you want to have a file attachment or even a payment, which is supported through Zoho Checkout. All of those can just be integrated onto this signed document based on your particular needs. In our case, we're going to keep it pretty simple with this document, so we'll go ahead and click Save. So now I have our template here, and this template is just like that, actually ready to send out. Now that I have my document filled out and my template created, how are we actually going to go about sending this? So here inside of the record, we can open up our template. We can then fill in any of our recipients where we want to send this out. So maybe to that client, I'm going to send this to myself so I can show you what it actually looks like when I open it. And then the Zenatta signature will be, let's see if it'll let me send it to myself as well. And now we can either do a quick send or we can click continue. If we click continue here, what we'll see, it wants us to do somebody else. Call this my voice example. It's not a spoiler alert. Both of those go to me. So then from here, I'll go ahead and click continue. This gives us an opportunity to review the document in a bit more detail before we send it out. If you know that your template is good to go, just use that quick send button, right? Because you'll just skip over these steps. But if you do want to get that last little check just to make sure that everything looks good, you can go through this process here. The one thing I like about it is that we have that last chance to review the signer fields and who's assigned to what before it actually goes out the door. So as you're getting started with Sign, you'll probably want to do it this way, but over time you might find, you know what, this template's locked in. I'm just going to use the quick send functionality instead. Now I can click send and this document will go directly out for signature. So what I'm going to do now is go ahead and jump over into my email inbox and actually show you what this looks like in practice. So here I am inside of my inbox and I've received this digital signature request. Within here, all I need to do when I'm a signer is just click Start Signing. This is going to open me into the Zoho Sign page where I can proceed to the document. First thing it's going to have me do is just check to confirm that I am opting into an electronic signature. So I'll just check that box and click Agree. And then what we'll see is that it will actually fill in some data where it can. So because I set the name of the signer, it's going to fill this in. It looks like it has me on file as Zenatta Consulting, so it's filled that in. Of course, I can type this in with my company name, however I need to. My project name, let's say this is our demo project. And then what we'll see is that my sign date has already filled in because it knows that it's today. And I can click this signature to fill in my signature accordingly. If you're working with someone who's never used Zoho Sign before, what you'll find is that it'll have them just create a signature real quick. They can either use kind of a predefined signature like this, or they can draw their own. The reality is that the security of electronic signature comes all via like IP address tracking. So you don't really need to force them to draw it unless you're in a particular industry that requires that level of compliance. So now I can click finish on this document and we've completed it from one side of the equation. So if we jump back over into Zoho Sign and we go to our documents view, we'll now be able to see this document filling in our list. So as you would expect, because it's an in progress document, it will show under this in progress tab, and it will also show inside of this all tab. Now, one thing that I really like about Zoho Sign is that when one of these documents is out, I can open it up and get an understanding of where we're at in that process, right? So I can see that a particular user accessed this document, and I can see that they've viewed it and signed it. And then I can see that this second signer has not yet had a chance to view it. If you want to get more granular and understand when they viewed it, when they signed it in more detail, we can go under this little tab and look at this activity history. And the activity history basically gives me a step-by-step view into every single thing that's going on with this document. Again, you don't always need those. I just like them because sometimes I'm thinking about doing a follow-up for someone and I can come in here and look and go, oh, you know what? They looked at the document this morning. I'm not going to bug them, right? They're probably reviewing it or they forward it on to somebody else and I don't want to be annoying, right? So I won't follow up with this one, but maybe I go to a different document and they haven't viewed it yet. And it's like, okay, let me send that follow-up and make sure that they didn't miss it when it originally hit their inbox. A few things that we can do from within this view while we're in here. We can make corrections to documents. We can extend the deadline of this document. So maybe they email me back and they go, hey, this looks great. You know, our legal team is out of office until the end of the month. Can you please give me a little more time to sign this? No problem. We can just go ahead and extend that expiration date. We can also send manual reminders just via this view, just by clicking the send reminder button. And we can also make changes to how the automatic reminders are working if we want to. So maybe somebody goes, hey, I'm not going to be able to get around to this until the end of the month. Maybe I'll extend this and say, cool, I won't ping you every 5 days because you already let me know that you're going to get to this later. One thing that we can also do within this view is if we come into our 3 dots, we can recall this document, which basically is a scenario where maybe there's a contract edit that's needed. Maybe they decline it, but they just email you rather than like clicking the decline button. We can just recall it, which basically just says, hey, I want to have a record that I sent this, but it's never going to be signed by the client. So we're going to just recall it and say, you know, declined by client or, you know, whatever reason we have for a recall, maybe like requires an edit, right? Whatever it is for your particular case. So I'm going to recall this now just because obviously the document isn't real and I don't want it to email me every couple days because I forget to recall it inside of this demo account. Now that this has been recalled, we can see it, of course, in our all documents view and in our reports and dashboards around these various settings. Now that we've gone over a few of the overviews of the settings as well as the baseline usage of creating templates and sending those out, let's take a look at some of the more advanced functionality here, including Sign Forms, CRM, Zoho Forms, and Zoho Books integration. With this template that I have created, if I want to create a sign form, which again is just a default form that will allow people to fill out the document, but you're kind of creating some of those fields outside of the document itself, I can go to my template, I can click on the 3 dots, and I can create a sign form. Occasionally what you'll see is that, here, I'll pop that again so it'll show our error message. Only one role is allowed without recipient name and email. So what does that really mean? What that means is if I look at my template, and actually we'll go into our edit template settings, what it wants is it's saying, hey, you have this template and it has two different people, and I don't know who either of them are. So if I were to go ahead and set my signer, like our internal signer, as my email address, and then click Save and Close, now we should be able to use that sign form. Really what it's saying is just that you can't have two different people that aren't specified that are going to fill out the sign form. The normal use case here is like maybe you're at a trade show and you have some type of vendor or distributor agreement, and it's not going to require like 5 different people to sign it. It's just that one. Then you can use a sign form. So here, I'll fill this in. I'll give it a name. We can set if we want these to expire at any point. We can enforce OTP, which basically is like a 2-factor verification. I actually do recommend doing this when you're working with sign forms, purely because technically anybody could fill this out and they could just type in anybody's email address. Without 2-factor authentication, you do have that risk of like someone finding this form, they just fill it out and say, I'm Tyler at Zenatta.com, and they're not. Right? And so having 2-factor authentication just allows this to be a little extra secure and make sure that you're not going to have anybody behaving badly, right? And lying about their identity. Now, for the purposes of this demo, I'm going to turn it off. But again, I do just recommend having that on if you want to maximize the validity of the contract that comes out of a sign form. You can limit responses to sign forms, and you can also avoid duplicate entries and allow signing after a resume. So maybe I come back to this document later. Again, I'm going to turn those off just for the sake of simplicity. Now I'll create this sign form, and now it will live under our sign forms list. So what does this really look like? I'm going to grab this URL and we'll go take a look. So I'm going to open up this sign form. Here it's going to ask me for my name and my email. So I'm going to put my name. I'm going to put, this is just an email alias I like to use. I'll go ahead and click continue. And what we'll see here is that now I just get right into that same screen, right? And it does pre-fill my name. Because I'm not signed into a Zoho account in this tab, it doesn't know what company I'm at. So I'll just say demo company. We'll say we've got a demo project, and then I'll do my signature. Now again here, because I'm not identified in this browser tab, it's going to ask me to pick whether I want a default signature, whether I want to draw my own, or whether I want to upload an image of a signature. Again, there are some industries that do require you to draw these in. Realistically, I wouldn't sweat it too much if you're not in one of those industries, just because, again, our verification comes from IP address. It comes from that OTP, right, of like the code landing in the email inbox and them okaying it. So I'll just do one of these default signatures and click finish. And just like that, we now have this completed document. If I jump over to our documents tab, we'll see that this is a completed doc. Actually, it's pending my signature as well, the countersign. And we can see that it was filled out based on that sign form. Again, I'm going to come in here and recall this just because these are not real documents. That kind of covers what we want to cover here natively within Zoho Sign in terms of using the templates and using the sign forms. Now let's jump into what I would say is the primary way that people use Sign, which is via another connected application. Unsurprisingly, I am going to start with CRM. That's probably our most common use case here for working with Zoho Sign. And I'm going to send this out via a deal record. So how do we do that? First thing we're going to do is go into our settings tab. We're going to go under the marketplace section and access Zoho. And then we'll scroll down and pull from our Zoho Sign integration. Now here, if I click Setup Now, it will connect my 2 accounts. I'm just going to check a couple boxes saying I sign away my rights, you own my firstborn child, or nothing like that. I'll unsign it for all users and click confirm. And what it's doing in the background here right now is just installing this plugin. So it's going to add a couple modules to CRM. It's going to add a couple buttons to CRM. And once it's done, we'll go through and I'll show you each of those additions. Oh, perfect timing. So now the plugin's been completed. I didn't have to cut away there. I expected we would do a little jump cut, but nope, it was really quick. And so here we'll see that it's basically installed fields and related lists and buttons for a variety of different modules. So what that looks like here is that it's added these Zoho Sign documents, recipients, and document events as a tab or module within our CRM. And if we go ahead and come back to our deal and give this a refresh, what we'll see is that those modules have been added as a related list to this particular record. And really what that means is just that when I send documents out, I'm going to have a really nice record of those sitting right here inside a CRM where I know that I have it. How do we actually go ahead and use this integration in CRM? Up here in the top right, under our custom buttons, now that we have this integration turned on, we'll see that this Send with Zoho Sign button has been added. So if I click on that button, it will open up a little tab here. And what it's going to do is essentially give me an interface where I can send out a document while I'm connecting it to the deal. So I can either drag in my own document and kind of start that process from scratch, or I can pull it in as a template. Now we can pull from Mail Merge or Zoho Sign. What I would recommend is if you're using Mail Merge, and I'll show you how to do those in just a moment, that you send them out in a different process. So I'll show that. So here we're going to use a Zoho Sign template, and we're going to grab that same exact example contract that we were just working with inside of Sign. What you'll see is that it does actually pull in the contact from your deal as the signer automatically. And then because we had that default second signer, it's pulled that in automatically too. One of the nice things here is just that process standardization, right? Where I don't have to type in this info. It's making that assumption that when you're sending from a deal, you probably want to send to this main contact. I could choose to change that and I could pick a different contact. I could type in the email address. I could add a user, right? Whatever it may be. But in this case, this is what I want. So I'm going to keep it just like that. Now I'm going to make one change here just because I know that, I'll keep it just as this. One thing you just have to be aware of, again, I'm in a demo account. I can't repeat these email addresses. So we'll leave it just like this. I can add a little note here if I want to put some flavor on it. But otherwise, I can either click next or quick send. Next is just going to take me through that exact same step that I showed you earlier where I can review which field is assigned to who. So in this case, I'll just click quick send. Now what it's doing in the background right now is just creating that document and filling in some of the data. One thing that I do want to show you, so we've sent out that document. I want to go through this process one more time because there's one little thing that I missed. So I'm going to pick our template. And here, I want to highlight that one thing you're not seeing is the ability to pre-fill data under this Merge Fields tab. And this is kind of a common thing that does happen. So the way to fix that is if we go over to Zoho Sign and we go into our template, I'm going to go ahead and clone this template. We'll call it example contract PF. I'll show why I'm doing that in a moment. We'll click continue. And here, one of those differences is if there is some data that we're going to pre-fill for the client, we want to make those into pre-fill by you fields, right? And this will have some implications inside of Zoho Sign, Zoho CRM, and Zoho Forms. Now, we're going to keep the signature field as filled by the client, but I'm going to have these pre-fill by you fields filled for some of the things that we already know based on the record in CRM that we're sending this from. So oftentimes you may actually have one or two versions of a template, and really the only difference is how you're sending them out. So let's run this process from start again. Inside of the deal, we'll click on Send with Zoho Sign. When we get into picking the template, we'll make sure to choose that PF template, which stands for pre-filled. And the one difference that we'll find when we're using this different version of the template is that some of those merge fields are going to pull in, right? So the full name, the company, and the project name, these are essentially our fields from that document itself. And now here I can come in and pull in whatever the appropriate data is for each of these columns. So pull in our account name, our contact name, and then maybe our deal name for that project name. So again, all of this is doing is just pre-filling that data. So if I were to click next, I just want to show you, it'll just pull exactly from what's in your CRM and drop it into those pre-filled fields on the document itself. So we'll see that these, even though this document has not even been sent yet, it's got those fields and it's ready to go because it knows that we want to use the fields that are connected to that deal record. One last thing I do want to show you here is within our CRM, we do have the functionality to send documents via what's called mail merge, right? So more of that traditional document generation process rather than our fillable overlaid fields process. So I'm going to step away for just one moment. I'm going to prep an example for you, and then we'll jump right into how to do this via mail merge. So what I've done here is just create a quick little example contract. You will notice that this one is done in docx, or like a Microsoft Word equivalent. So I'm going to show you how to do this with a mail merge process rather than going directly to sign. Really, the differences here get into the really nitty-gritty about the exact look and feel of the documents and how you want to send it out. Again, making some of these determinations can be a little bit tricky, so when in doubt, head over to Zenatta.com, reach out to us, we're happy to help. But in here, I've got this docx template, and if I click on edit, what we're able to do here is create a merge document with a bit of a different process that we're using inside of the sign templates. Main difference here, the way to think about it, is that in this case, I'm like merging data into a Word document, whereas the other way I showed you, you're overlaying data into a PDF document. So a couple things we can do here, quick little crash course in mail merge. I can pull in things like our account name, put that down below, and our contact name, just because we always want to pull that into our doc. I'll also go ahead and just map in our deal name, just pulling under this automate section. And these are all just going to pull fields from whichever module you had selected as the baseline module for this merge. Now, the one last little bit of special sauce here is if we go into the fields section and go into our signer fields, here is where we'll be able to define who the signers are and where their fields should go. So if I want to add like a signature field and then maybe a sign date, I can do that. And then I'll go to signer A and add those same fields here underneath their section. And so really all that I've done is just create that same type of document flow, but in a bit of a different format. So now that I've created that mail merge document, let me show you how to do it that way. So again, similar outcome, different process, and it all just comes down to exactly what you need that document to look like. So here, to send out the doc, I'll go under the three dots and I'll go to mail merge. It's going to ask me which template I want to use. So we'll use that example contract that I had just created and we'll click merge. Here, this is kind of a couple steps in this process. So on this first page, you'll just go under automate and click run merge. We don't need to do too much work here because we've already mapped out all of those different fields and where they're going to land in the document. So what it's doing now is just filling in that data for us. We'll see that it's filled in the contact name, the company name, and the project. And so now to send this out via sign, we'll just go under compose and then distribute. And then we'll click on Zoho Sign. Now we'll click upload, and it's just going to basically take us through that exact same process at this point. The only difference is, again, that template lives in CRM rather than inside of Zoho Sign. Honestly, I would say when we're talking about like contracts and merge documents, probably 75% of the time we're doing them this way via mail merge, just because it does create a much more flexible document where we can add unique language, do logical controls, show and hide pages, etc. But it all just comes down to exactly what you need. Then from here, I just would need to fill in my signer information, click on continue, and send it directly out for signature. So either way, you're going to be able to get to that point where you are sending documents. I will, just to do one last note on the CRM integration that's native, the one nice thing there is that you do get this list of all the documents that have been sent. And if I were to click into either of those, I can see if they've been completed. I can see all the recipients. I can see the activities. So like when we sent it, when they signed it, all that good stuff. So it does give you a really nice audit log when you're using that native integration between Zoho Sign and Zoho CRM. Now that we've covered CRM, I'm going to close about 1 million tabs here, and then we're going to jump over to Zoho Forms. Forms is a really commonly used application for capturing a variety of different info, oftentimes information that's been embedded on a website, right? So somebody lands there, they fill out a document, and they get an email response, create a lead, whatever it may be. But one nice thing here inside of Zoho Forms is that it does have that direct integration into our document generation tool. So let's drag in some fields into our form. We'll call this the full name of our contact. Unsurprisingly, right? I'm just adding that same set of information. We'll have our company name, And then we'll have our project name just as our fields here. Now, the one extra field that I am going to add on this is email address, because in the previous cases, you think about it like I'm creating a document, I'm specifying the email address, and then I'm sending it out. The difference here with a Zoho form is that this might be embedded on a website, right? This might be something that you're not exactly sure who's going to fill this out at that time. Again, big use case here is like you go to a conference, right? You want to create an easy way for someone to fill out their info and get some type of vendor agreement, right? Just complete it on the fly. So now what I'll do is I'll go into integrations. Again, Zoho Forms, we could do a whole video on the integrations here, but we're just going to look at Zoho Sign. We'll click on Integrate. We'll choose our template. Now, let's look at the difference here of which one we choose. So if we were to choose our default template, what you'll find is that, nothing is available, right? Because we don't have any of those fields set as pre-filled by us. If I select my pre-filled template, voila, there we go. Now I have the data that I need to go ahead and pre-fill this info. So I'm just lining up our fields. When things are required on the document, we have to make them required on the form. So I'll just check this box. Down here below, we're specifying who our recipient should be. If you'll remember, one of those recipients is essentially predefined as, Tyler at Zenatta. So it's just going to ask us for the one that isn't. Here, we'll just need to choose what field from our form we should use as their name and what field on the form we should use as their email. Now, once we fill out this document or this integration page, there's one last choice that we need to make. So we can either create this as a draft, which we will then review and send. We can send it directly to their email address when they complete it. Or if you're on the proper version of Zoho Sign and Zoho Forms, you'll be able to redirect them right to that document where it will basically just flip over. In our case, we're going to do option 2 because in my demo account, I'm not allowed to do the redirect. That's oftentimes how you'll do this. But then from there, I can go ahead and just click integrate. So now if I access this form and I fill out my information, we'll use a different name this time. We'll call this our example Z Forms. I'm going to use my email address that I handy dandy template email. And then we'll call this our Z Forms project. Again, I just like to have the unique data here so I can show you how this works. So now when I click submit, in the background, that automation is triggered. So over inside of Zoho Sign, if we go to our documents, we'll see that we have this document that's been created. And what will happen next is that document should land directly in my inbox, again, just because of those integration settings that we have chosen. All right, so I was a little too quick there, but what we can see is that our document was created here and it was sent over to my, alias email address. And over here on the right, if I go ahead and click Start Signing via email, I can proceed to my document. And we'll see that my Z Forms information is the stuff that's filled in here. Again, just because that's what we happen to type in on the form itself. Keep in mind, if you have the proper licensing for Forms and Sign, this process could cut out the email, right? And just go directly with kind of a flip over to this page. Now that we've gone over CRM and Zoho Forms, I want to show you one other kind of interesting use case of Zoho Sign, which exists in Zoho Books. So Zoho Books, of course, is Zoho's financial management tool. You can send your estimates, invoices, run your purchasing through this flow. But it also does have an integration for Zoho Sign that I think is pretty cool. So if we jump into settings, and then we go to our integrations and look at our Zoho apps, we can see that there is actually an integration for Zoho Sign. So I'm going to connect that. We'll click on Connect Now. It's going to ask us for a couple options. So essentially, when do we want various people to sign? So most of these signatures are internal, right? So these are used in like approval processes and things like that are internal to the company. I'm going to turn some of these off for now. And we're going to focus on the one that I see people use most often, which is a customer signature on an estimate, or you may call it a quote. So I'll click integrate. And now what this will do, if I come into our system and let's say I create an estimate under our sales tab, you make sure I have a customer here that's got one of my email addresses. There we go. So if I go ahead and create a quote, or your system may call it an estimate, just depending on if you clicked a certain button or not, it will pull in that data. Now, let's say I'll just put in my bundled product, my arbitrary, product here, and I save and send this. And then I am just going to send this directly out to myself so I can show you in my inbox. But what we'll see is that now, because I've turned on the ability to sign this, when I receive it, rather than just clicking accept, I can actually sign off on that acceptance. So we're going to jump over to the inbox and I'll show you exactly what that process looks like. All right, so over here in my inbox, I've received that estimate. I, of course, captured it as a PDF, but when I go to accept it and click on view here, let's say I look at this and I'm the client, and I go, great, this looks good, and I click accept, it will now ask us for that signature. Again, I can do this by typing them in. It will ask me to confirm my email address, so I'll put in my voice example. And then I can sign and accept. Now I'll receive an email confirmation of this as the customer with the signed estimate. And then back internally inside of Zoho Books, we'll know that that estimate has been accepted by the client. And if I open it up, we'll be able to see that it has been digitally signed just based on that confirmation. Now, you may see that in your particular template, you're not seeing that signature. What we'll need to do is come in and edit the template settings. So if we look at our templates, and I cannot type today, we'll go into our templates here, we'll open up our quotes, and if we wanted to add that signature down to the bottom, we'll just need to go into our other details and check the box for signature, and now that would show up. So if we go back to our estimate after saving this, we should see that signature showing up there right at the bottom. And there it is, so our authorized signature. So again, this is just one of those flows that is useful in the case where maybe you have larger estimates and you do want to get that sign off before you start any work, right? You want something a little bit more than just clicking accept. This is a good fit for making sure that you get all of that information that you need and get a digital signature to make sure that you are good to proceed and move forward. All right, so I think that essentially covers it here for Zoho Sign. In this video, we've gone over the full walkthrough of the settings and the core usage of the application. And then we also took a look at the CRM, Mail Merge, Zoho Forms, and Zoho Books integrations that are available for Zoho Sign. So again, we always do hope that you find these videos useful. And if you did, be sure to like and subscribe down below, as that really does help us out. If it sparks any questions, feedback, or additional video requests, please be sure to leave those in the comments section below, as we do try to read and respond to as many of those as we can on a weekly basis. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.